Big week coming up, all right? The thing that I want to be at the top of your head, pen to the mind, double click on it, subscribe to it, is
I was down, but now I'm up. Yeah. This all God, this ain't no lie. Yeah.
patience. Spelled P-A-Y, patience, right? That's what's going to get you paid this week. All right, look at these. We got a big week. We could just look at the economic data, right? We have a presidential election coming up. Obviously, all of you are aware of that, right? Then immediately following that, or 2 days later, we're also going to get an interest rate decision coming up. I guess it'll be 3 days later. We have our interest rate decision and we have the Fed press conference. This is going to be a huge week, and we can see that reflected in contracts, right? We have a relatively high volume on the SPY index. We can see that these contracts are pricing in quite a bit right now, very expensive. And what you're likely going to see this week is that volatility is going to be ripped out of those, okay? And keep that in mind, because if you come in on the index in a market that's just chopping in this range and the news comes out, volatility gets slipped out, you're going to lose 30, 40, 50% off your contracts right off the bat without the market moving much at all. Okay, and this catches a lot of traders off guard when it happens, especially if they're more novice. So it's important that we look for key level breaks and we be careful with some more longer term positions, right? And we size for that. So I'm carrying a slight downside bias into this week, although it's going to be good to kind of put your biases aside on a market that can move pretty big anyway. There's a big price jump that's being priced into the market for either direction, but I'll be looking to see if we can get a 568 break to be a setup for some 565 puts, and then we could look for extension maybe all the way down at 560 where we have some support. Below that, it's going to get real ugly in my opinion. For the upside, if we do get a big print to the upside, you go to all-time highs, you start hunting for 600 at the end of the year, and you just kind of ride that out, right? Play the structures on the way up and look for a rally to the end of the year. In my opinion, there's greater macro forces that I think are going to push this market higher anyways, regardless of what happens in the short term. Even if we do get a big pullback here. Then also the number one play that kind of stands out in my mind that I'm currently already in, okay, but not for options. So I'm playing this with shares, and it's going to be really tricky with options because, again, of the implied volatility priced into these contracts for GJT. So I was short on shares. If you follow me on Twitter, if you're in the Discord, pretty much at the high, I set up my short on the shares. And I said only for the brave, just as a disclaimer for new traders, that this thing can squeeze unreasonably, right? It's a meme stock. But I think post-election, regardless of the outcome of the election, regardless if Trump wins or if Trump loses, I think that this stock is going to melt. It's at $30. You might think, oh, it's already come down a lot. I did take half of my short position off, short on shares, remember, not on options. But I think this thing a year from now likely to be $2. Buying those contracts that far out, you might be in a situation where this goes down like $15 and you're break even. It's all going to depend on what the IV looks like. But if you can get the IV to come down, especially post-election, there might be some opportunities to actually set up those shorts and then make some money on this. Or if it could stay persistently high, I think that's very unlikely. There might have even been an opportunity to short this actually into the event. So if you're more of a day trader, you got to watch this IV. If it starts to melt, just cut the contracts. But if you do get a big, shoot to the downside, I think it's more likely to squeeze into the election and then melt down. But all that speculation, follow the price levels, right? What I'm looking for is I want to see the 528.56 give out. And then I'm going to see if there's an opportunity based on the IV if I can set up some options. If not, I'll just leave my short on for my shares, or it might be good entry to short the shares for GJT. The next thing that's going to be on my radar is Tesla, which has had a pullback here, a pretty nice pullback. Tesla, I think, might want to go for a 50% retracement or go a bit lower. I think it's a bit at risk of Trump loss, so that's why it's going to be on my radar. Lots of people are saying this is the Trump trade. I don't really believe it. But there's a good argument to be made, right? Especially with the way that Elon has endorsed Trump. If Trump does lose, this has a political risk, I think, priced into it, where we could get quite a sell-off. I think it becomes a buying opportunity for long-term holders. As all of you know who follow me, I am a big Tesla investor It is half of my long-term account. Well, it's more than that now. It's grown to a substantial amount of my, a majority of my entire portfolio, because I have big belief in the company. All of this as a long-term holder will just be noise, but in the short term, if it's going to go down, I'm going to play it, right? So if we get the break from the Friday highs and we're headed lower, I think it's a setup for some 240s or 243 puts to the downside there. The next thing that I want to talk about is NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is getting added to the Dow Jones. Okay. And for those of you that are bears, this is like your bearish thing that you gotta, this is your upside risk that you have to be worried about on what could cause the market to squeeze up. NVIDIA getting added to the Dow is pretty bullish. Anytime a stock gets added to a major fund, there's a lot of robotic buying that occurs as funds buy it since it's being added to a major index. NVIDIA already running high, and the market's kind of deemed it the sole winner, especially since we've seen other companies like SMCI kind of fall apart. You do have some risks from SMCI, by the way. This company looks like it's about to get delisted. It has earnings coming up. We'll see how that goes. But they got to really prove that the financials are in a complete mess and that they're not the next end run at this point, because this thing could go lower. All right, what is low can go lower. The news here and everything going on makes it too dangerous to touch. If you want to play to the upside, just wait. You know, it'll be obvious that there's upside potential in this. If it gets a turnaround, it'll likely be on news. Go look at the news, see what it is. If it's, hey, they just were really crappy at accounting, but they can pull it back, something like of that sort, this thing can explode back to the upside. It'll be obvious as an upside play, and then you have huge upside there. But until that actually happens, keep in mind you have 50% or more downside from here, okay? Don't look at this and be like, oh, it's down 90%. Yeah, a 50% loss is another 5% drop, right? Okay, so keep that in mind for SMCI. But if the news can carry NVIDIA higher, NVIDIA has the potential to carry the indexes higher and kind of keep the tech trade or the big seven alive, which is going to be enough to keep the indexes alive as well, whether you're watching the NASDAQ or you're watching the SPY index, right? So for NVIDIA, I'm kind of keeping it a bit higher than normal at the 140, and I think that could be a setup for the 144 here. And from one, obviously that would push us to the all-time high. If you get a breakthrough there, you got some more room to chase it, right? That's when you start slowly cutting your winners and let the rest ride. And that's going to be it for this weekly report. I'm going to keep it really short and really sweet for this one. I added a lot more info in the Discord. If you want to join, the link down below and talk with us there. But I'll probably do another video post-election after we see what the reactions from the market are, or I might even wait until after we get the interest rate decision. The one thing that you kind of need to keep in mind when it comes to the weirdness with the interest rates, and I think this is something that is notable enough to add here at the end of the report, is we can see here when we look at the reaction that rates have had after the Fed has done a cut is very abnormal. Okay, in the past 40 years, we haven't seen a reaction like this, where they just continue to climb higher and higher and higher. All right, we've had mostly sideways movement. We've even had sometimes where it does start to climb up and then come back down. But this is pretty much parabolic. The Fed cut rates and then rates went up. That's the market kind of screaming at us that we didn't need a rate cut, that we don't need monetary stimulus. And it could be also saying that it's worried about inflation, which could be related to Trump getting into to Trump being priced in as the winner, right? And all the betting markets and all the polls right now, Trump is the leader, all right? If Trump loses, this could have a huge reversal, which then could present an opportunity in bonds. Could. The issue here being that there's no demand and buyers keep dropping off a cliff. So, as I've said before, we still do have this bond risk where if we continue to see big velocity to the downside, and the indexes could get weak and we could see like a sell all event, could be temporary, could lead to another yen carry trade blow up. All speculation at this point. We got to play it by ear. We have to be nimble. All right. So patience, patience, patience. I want to start and end the video with that. We'll see you guys on the next report. Oh, one last thing. We will have a live stream in the Discord for the election. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I will live stream it on YouTube. Of course, I will live stream the first hour of the market open every single day, as we have been on YouTube. I recently blew up on TikTok. I've like doubled my following there. So like the video and subscribe so we can do that on YouTube. That would be super cool of you. Appreciate it. God bless, guys.